My skin is black.
What you looking
My
at?
skin
Yeah,
is black.
I feel so good to be black right now.
is black.
Welcome to episode 61 of the Black in Fashion podcast. I know it's been a long time since you have seen us face to face. Everything has been audio, so we're definitely making sure that we're back in the studio and that we're staying safe and that we're social distancing and all of that good jazz. So today with me, I have Mo Glover. She's my guest for the day. Mo is a veteran Brooklyn-based fashion designer. She's experienced in working with department store and emerging women's wear brands. Becoming a parent to her son, ZYEM led her to create her own brand, ZYEM NYC. She began honing her creative skills studying at the LaGuardia High School of Music and Performing Arts and Pratt Institute, earning a BFA in fashion. Her unique point of view emerged from memories of growing up in Brooklyn, traveling to Europe, Hong Kong, and India. Her style aesthetic includes influences of street style culture, old and new. Young models and style influencers wearing her brand are mentioned on rollingout.com and Essence Magazine Street Style Met Gala. Street Style Block Party blogs. She has contributed costume design for Toddlewood's homage to the Met Gala. Oh, I'm working with Toddlewood. September 2018, Diverse Fashion Magazine covers and Black Panther movie poster. She was inspired to create and represent a Wakanda-inspired kidswear collection at Fashion Week Brooklyn in April 2018. Glover has made it her personal mission to promote positivity, cultural enrichment, and to inspire others of all ages to express their bold and artistic style. I love it. Oh, yes, Toddlewood. Yes. I was just speaking with her. She just had like a consultation to make some of her dresses in production for the kids. Yeah. Okay. So the way I like to let the podcast roll is, first I like to start with an icebreaker. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say this or that, and you just tell me which one you prefer over the other. Mm-hmm. And then we'll jump right into the questions and getting to know a little bit about you and your background and your journey through the fashion industry. Okay. Mm-hmm. So for my thing, it's called this or that. Pants or shorts?
Pants.
Vests or blazers?
Vest.
Mules or wedges?
Mules.
Head wraps or hats?
Both.
One or the other. You got to pick one.
Head wraps.
Head wraps. Nice. Okay. So just to break the ice a little bit. So now I just want you to just start off by telling us a little bit about your background and where you're from and was there a fuel or series of events that inspired you to lead you to a career in fashion?
As you mentioned my bio, what I can add along with that is that pretty much as far as I can remember, I've always liked to draw and was creative, and I realized I wanted to be a fashion designer when I was 9 years old. I was a very old soul. I probably still am, but a little silly too. So I'm the oldest of a total of 10 children.
Oh,
wow. Growing up, I've always pretty much was the big girl and had to help with my siblings. So I always wondered, and maybe it's watching TV, we were very, children are impressionable. So, and I loved Barbie, and Barbie was like a nurse sometimes, and sometimes Barbie was a news reporter, and sometimes Barbie was a lawyer. So I said, well, what do I want to do? Mm-hmm. And so I, pondered that at a very young age. And I happened to be watching a PBS special about a African prince who made wardrobe for royalty.
Oh, nice.
And they showed his illustrations, and I said, that is it. That is what I want to do. And so from the age of 9, I just tried to hone my skills and figure out how I could do that. Nice. And I was lucky enough to, in junior high school, have teachers that helped me work on my portfolio, and I got into, for LaGuardia High School. At the time, I did not know that it was the fame school. So I had also got into art and design and fashion industries. My art teacher pretty much just was like, are you crazy? If you don't go to that school, I will go outside and fight you myself. You are crazy if you don't go to that school. So I went to LaGuardia High School, and then from LaGuardia, I went to Pratt Institute and got my degree in fashion. Started working the day after I graduated.
Amazing.
I was interning for Ralph Lauren Children's Wear. I really love children's wear. That's what I started out with. Then I get bored easily, so I got a little tired of being put in a box, and that has always been my issue through my long career, is being put in a box. I think if you're creative, you should feel if you want to do whatever you want to do, just do it. Don't feel like, oh, just because I'm a fashion designer, I can't paint. Or just because, if you're creative, you're creative. Now, some things we may be great at and some things we may not be, but you can do whatever you want to do.
I hear that. And you don't always have to do one thing. Like, you can do multiple things. Like, you can do this for a couple of years, this for a couple of years. So then I feel like that passion changes over time too. And then you find new things that you're interested in. And, you can start a new venture whenever you want to, start a new craft whenever you want to. So I definitely agree with you. Do you feel like that the fashion industry and the jobs that you were in were the things that were boxing you in?
I feel that way. And I think it was because, I worked in corporate. That's how I'm one of those designers that worked for big corporations and started that way instead of just, graduating from college and having the luxury of saying, oh, I want to make my own line and just doing that. I needed to take care of myself. I needed a job. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. So to me, the epitome of making it was, wow, I'm like getting a salary and I'm working, for, these big companies, and I'm doing what I love. And then as time went on, I realized that you're not allowed to be very creative. Yeah. Working for a lot of brands, especially when they're commercial in the middle of the road, selling to Macy's or Bloomingdale's or whatever. I mean, even I'm sure people in high fashion, it's the same thing if you're not the lead designer. Right. And so, the advantage of it, though, I have to say, is I learned the ins and outs of the whole process, from designing to technical to production, and that is definitely something you can't buy. And so now that I'm doing my own brand, which was eventually the inevitable, and the reason why I say this is because these few years where I'm actually really focused on my own brand, I feel the most motivated. I feel like it's a part of me, and when you feel that way, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks. Because it's part of you and is what you're putting out there. And whoever receives it, great, and whoever doesn't. And I find that things are resonating more with my design when it's really from the heart.
Gotcha. Do you feel like do you feel like design school is necessary to be a designer? Or do you feel like if you just seek education in other outlets that you'll still be successful? Do you feel like that design school really lays the foundation?
I think this could be a very controversial question. Because
that's the point.
Because as someone that went to design school and did everything accordingly, and going into my career, I found I happen to have maybe about my 4th or 5th year in the industry, that's when a lot of celebrities and a lot of known people decided they wanted to have clothing lines, right? And so the quote-unquote designer sort of was underappreciated and not acknowledged, because now the face had to be someone that was famous saying that these were their designs, when really it's people like me that's doing them. Right. And so, maybe it's a little bit of ego, but it's also it's pivoting, because stores, department stores, boutiques are now telling designers it changed. The buyers are the designers nowadays. Now the designers saying, this is what we want, make it, and this is how much we're going to pay for it. Absolutely. Whereas, in the height of fashion, which I think is probably the 80s and 90s, the designer pretty much told the world, this is what it is. Exactly. And so I think, do you have to go to design school to be a designer? Absolutely not. I think that you can learn, you can be apprentice, you can work under designers, you can learn from experience. But there's a lot of things that may be missed going to school, and that really has nothing to do with being inside the industry. It's more dealing with other people dealing with maybe getting assignments of that you do not want to do. It's
Right.
sort of learning how to function in a world that's not necessarily going to hold your hand.
Gotcha.
And also, it's the school experience. I would never take it away from the world, for the world. And also, you also are open to other parts of creativity. Me having to go into an art school, it's everything about fashion is not necessarily just sewing. It's a lot more than that. It's art.
Right. Feel you on that. From my own personal experiences, I mean, of course, I went to design school too. I was the only black girl in most of my classes. That's why I got my degree. And then, of course, I didn't even realize you didn't have your headphones on. It's okay. I don't feel that it's necessary, to actually go to design school. I do feel that education is necessary and making sure you understand the ins and the outs of the business itself, which is where my company comes in place, LC Apparel Consulting. You familiar with my company?
Yes.
Yeah. So like that is, the courses, the mentorship, the education. So definitely those things are out there. And I'm not the only person who does that. There are multiple ways of finding education opposed to being in the school. Now, when it comes to, I guess, like the working in the industry, I do recommend that people work in the industry to understand, like you said, the ins and the outs and stuff like that. But would you say that it's better to refer people to not necessarily work in design per se, but more so work in product development, work in production, work in tech? I feel that, I want your input on this. I feel that, we go to design school, we get these degrees in design, and then we feel like we have to work in design. Whereas I think I took a different role because I feel like I knew that from Jump Street. Like I was just like, I would never design for anyone that wasn't Collier Boutique. That was my brand. So when I entered the fashion industry, I entered in a production assistant position. I never applied for a design position because I was never interested in designing for anyone else but myself. But I still wanted to know the business. So I did product development, I did merchandising, I did production, I did tech, and I did all of those areas to me, which also make more money than design. I feel like designers are the least paid, and then they moved everything so that now everything is computer generated. So like you're making CADs and whatnot, and you pretty much sitting at a computer all day, opposed to if you was working in like product development and production, there's a little bit more function there. So do you feel like when you do advise or you do go through the education process and you do go to school, should we even be majoring in fashion design, or should we be majoring in like product development or like tech or like production?
It's funny because I was teaching before COVID. I was teaching at an after-school program, a fashion program, at the Bronx Dance Academy.
Nice.
And that's the first thing I would tell students when it came to fashion. The first introductory classes, the fact that fashion is not just fashion design. There's a lot of other elements for fashion, whether it's being a merchandiser, to being a buyer, to being actually in magazine editorials. You don't necessarily have to be a fashion designer. But what I can say is that, people have to find their niche. Some people are good at some things and more so than others. And being a technical designer is very rewarding. The money is great, and you're not so sometimes emotionally involved in the design aspect. But I think, there's certain things that designers have that other aspects of the design doesn't, and that's what differentiates yourself to know, do I want to do design, or do I want to be more involved in product development? The designer is the one that takes the fall. If something's wrong, at the end of the day, it's usually our fault, even when it isn't. And it's certain things, I think it's just the details. It's just the epitome of being detail oriented. Where, like I can tell if something is 1/8 of an inch off, the hem is 1/8 of an inch off, but maybe they don't. So I think, design is not just about the designer, it's about the team. It's just, it's so many different aspects in creating a line, creating a look. And so, I think for me, what I'm trying to convey at this point is that I just want to say that I feel the fashion designer is very underappreciated. I think that the talent and the skill that it takes, because I love Project Runway, but shows like Project Runway, watching television, it makes it seem so glamorous and it's so quick and it's so cookie cutter. And, the designers that actually keep the longevity of it all understand that you have to truly have some passion to it, because there's going to be times where, people are not going to relate to what you're doing. But because you love it, you have to continue.
Makes sense. What would you say is the hardest part about breaking into the fashion industry?
It's the rejection. The fashion industry, just like a lot of other industries, are about relationships. And so it's very important to have mentors and alliances to really be able to get feedback and to to talk to, and just in general, because you don't have to have a lot of relationships to be able to work in an industry, but you'll find that to enable to move up and to be able to grow, you have to form relationships with people that are going to help you do that.
Makes sense. Have you ever faced any backlash or adversity in any of your fashion industry positions?
Absolutely, most of the time. It's just I've never, my personality is weird. I would call myself sort of an introvert extrovert. So I was naturally an artist first, and so the fashion design thing, for me, is the fact that I love the idea of creating looks with the art. And there's a lot of, how can I say this? It can be a bit political. The way you present yourself, the way you speak, you're constantly being judged. So that is a part where I struggled with. And also the fact that the industry, being a Black woman in the industry, there are not a lot of bigger companies that have women that look like me in lead positions. And that is just, what it is. And it may be because the buyers, they want people that look like them.
Right.
And so I look forward to maybe things changing a bit, and there's be a little bit more diversity when it comes to those type of things, because the Black buying power is very strong. And yeah.
Gotcha. That's why we got to keep that dollar circulating in the community.
Absolutely.
So can you tell me, I have a segment called Is it Success or Is it Disaster? Can you tell me about maybe a situation where there was at work or in your own company where it may, client, customer, where it may have started off as a disaster and then it turned into a success story and you learned something from it and then you started to incorporate maybe a new procedure or policy or anything like that in your business?
I learned from all of my mistakes, and I make a lot of them. So I'm not going to even lie about that. But absolutely, I find myself to be very much an optimist, sometimes to a fault. So I think that's what being in the fashion industry in general is about, is to be able to make lemonade out of lemons. You have to make the best of everything because things don't always come on time. You have to be able to work with what you have. So, I remember there was a time where I had to travel to India, work for an Indian company, and we had to push the line. And it was the first time I ever went, and I was scared. I had to check in my carry-on, so I ended up going. It was an overnight flight, and I had on a slip dress. That's it. That's all I had on this plane. I missed my connecting flight in France, so I was stuck in France for 2 days with this same outfit on, nothing. And then so when I got there, they didn't have my luggage right away.
Oh Lord!
But I had to go, and I felt like in the factories, the men that were working in the factories weren't really respecting me. But I pushed through, and funny enough, I was supposed to leave after 2 weeks, and I was told at the airport, I couldn't get on the flight. So I ended up staying for a whole month. And, from that experience, though, I learned how I could adapt to environments that I was not familiar with. And, you can pretty much make a whole line in a month, and being in the factories and learning hands-on how everything is done, whether how the fabric is dyed and how the embroidery is done, and you're seeing these people that are actually behind these machines and where they live. And it's an experience. Being able to travel to these factories is something I truly appreciate, that have given the opportunity to be able to do that. And so I felt like, even though when I got home, I wanted to kiss the ground. It made it easier for me to continue to return and do it again, because you realize how rewarding it is to travel, to actually get out, see the other part of the world, and how beautiful it is.
That's amazing. And from like all the different things that you've done, like from traveling and like doing different campaigns and being in a part of a lot of different things, what would you say was your favorite thus far?
My favorite travel, or just my favorite experience in general?
Your favorite experience, because I'm also looking at, like, I know you did like a lot of traveling and stuff like that, but you were also a part of a lot of different things, like the Essence block party and like the Wakanda. Like, what was your favorite project overall, or like your favorite like travel experience that may have inspired you to do a project?
I have to say that I don't particularly have a favorite experience, because I'm always trying to top my experience. But I definitely think going to India changed me. Just seeing people that were dark like me, but they were in India, and that their culture was completely different, and how beautiful the colors is. The one thing I would think was a sense of triumph for me was in college. I struggled a bit, because I was one of the fashion designers, one of the very few that started in college, because I went from actually doing architecture to fashion and not having sewn a lick. And so I already had a learning curve. And when I left Pratt Institute, our senior year, my children's wear was on it was in the daily news. And for me, not that I need acclimates, but that made me feel so good that, I was at the time, my family, we were living in the projects in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And I said, look, this Brownsville, Brooklyn girl has, is her picture in her kids' clothing is in the daily news. How amazing is that? And so it just, it just shows me that if you work hard, you may not get always the results that you expect, but it will always be rewarding.
I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. So what would you say is like essential key things that when you are seeking a career in design or even entrepreneurship are the key pieces of education that you need?
Well, you have to be business oriented. You have to understand how a business works. That's something I have to admit was a bit of a learning curve initially, because of the fact that I've always been the design person. I've let someone else do the business, but you have to be able to know how a business runs. And I think that's something that is missing from a lot of design schools that maybe they're now incorporating. You have to be able to understand how a business operates, what's overhead, how to make a profit. Another quality would be stick-it-to-itness. Being able to understand that there may be a few failures, but in order to succeed, you have to have them. And just being open-minded, and not even though you should stay true to your brand and your dream. Just be open to understand that, and I'm a spiritual person, that maybe God has something bigger and a little different in mind, and it is in your best interest.
I like that. Okay. So what would you say is lacking in the fashion industry as of right now?
I think there's a lack of camaraderie. Specifically from people of color. I think that, back in the 70s and 80s, I look at designers like Stephen Burrows, and Patrick Kelly, and it just seemed like it was so, I'm sure they had their own struggles, but that's, once again, I keep going back to people looked at that and said that is fashion, that is they contributed to the trend. And I think back then, the people initiated what it was, and I think that now it's a little different because it's more about popularity and less about actual skill.
Actually, you hit the nail on the head with that one. For sure.
So it's like, I think, it was, it's funny. I can use Instagram, for example. I think there was a debate on whether or not to take off the likes so everyone can't see. And I feel like
I like that.
That would be a great, even if it's just
I think you can now. I think like right now, Instagram, like I feel like you can only see you can't see everyone else's like you can click on it, but like they don't have the number there. I think it's certain ones, because I know it's certain people that I go to, and then you can't see anything. You could just see that a whole bunch of people liked it. Let me see. Yeah, see, like, it don't even pop up no more, like, how many likes the person has.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it just has this, like, literally, that's how it is now, so you can't see it anymore.
That makes it more
and that's
of
what
an
it should have been.
Field.
Like, you would actually have to click on it and, I guess, just, like, look and see, and it still don't put the number at the top, and ain't nobody gonna sit here and count this. They did change it, so that was perfect.
Yes. Because I think, unfortunately, when it comes to the masses, it's human nature to sort of, pivot to what everyone else is pivoting to, instead of really seeing, what's really great. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of underground designers that are not really being put, in the forefront because of this, And so, it'd just be nice if, if people really just truly appreciated the art of fashion and style without worrying if Rihanna's wearing it, without worrying, like, let's bring back individuality.
I love that. Okay. I feel it. I'm like, please, bring it on home.
It's hard, though, because at the end of the day, that's sort of the epitome of selling to a lot of people. Like, the department stores, that's why they have mannequins. Not everyone knows how to put an outfit together.
Right.
So that's understandable. But, it'd just be nice if people really were in tune to what works for them and what they like, and that maybe what the next person has on may not look great on them.
Right.
We don't all have to look the same. That's boring.
Yeah. So let's talk about ZYEM. I'm saying that right?
Yes.
ZYEM. Yes. Let's talk about ZYEM a little bit. What is the core, the distinct characteristics, the foundation of ZYEM, and what do people expect to see with like each collection and stuff?
It's funny because it's hard to look outside yourself, but some of my customers and friends look at my pieces and then they'll go on the street and say, you know what, I saw something and it reminded me of you. So I've said, okay, that's maybe a good thing, because now I do have a style that people are very much starting to recognize. Mm-hmm. And I think with ZYEM, it's more, I feel like I like to gravitate being a parent myself, but also being someone who's I think I'm still pretty hip. I'm not the youngest, person out there, but I think I'm still pretty hip in it too. I grew up in a hip hop generation. Mm-hmm. So it's more geared towards the parents and the children. So it's creating a nostalgia feeling with parents, but it's recognizable for the children.
Love that.
It's something where, it's fun. I don't like things to be too sexy for the girls, and I like a lot of the pieces to be interchangeable in unisex.
I like that. Okay. And how long has ZYEM been, how long have you been doing it?
I actually started in 2007, but I failed. And let me tell you why I feel like I failed, and it was a good failure. Okay. I was too, my head was too wrapped around working for other brands. Okay. So my design aesthetic looked like wherever I was working.
Oh my God. Same.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that.
I was in design school when I was working at Banana Republic. I was in my senior year, and my senior thesis was all suiting. It was blazers, it was pencil skirts, it was blouses and stuff. And then as I continued to design, I started moving myself into the custom world. I think I was working at Akira, and we had like a lot of like the club dresses. And then like a lot of like special occasion stuff, and the stuff that I was making was very similar to what we had in the store. So every time it was a while I was working for Halston Heritage, and I was working for Halston Heritage, same thing, like my silhouettes changed, my things changed, definitely everything that I was doing outside of work, I feel like it translated back to work, which wasn't really my aesthetic, which put me like all over the place as a designer. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it's which is why I feel ZYEM really didn't come to me where I felt like it was getting there until about 2006. And that's when I put my collection together for to present at Fashion Week Brooklyn for the first time. I've shown at Fashion Week Brooklyn a few times. Nice. And did an ad campaign with Jamel Shabazz, who to me, he's the epitome of Brooklyn street style. And I always looked up to him. I love his pictures, and it was because I feel that I was able to put a bit of myself into it, my experiences into it, and it's still sellable. And that's something that I think a lot of designers struggle with, being able to have pieces that are fun, and they don't have to be fun. Not all designs are fun, but things that people gravitate towards because they still have to be sellable. You have to be able to sell it. Right. So if you have all the money in the world, that's great. You can create pieces for the museum, but at the end of the day, most designers like me, this is something we want to make a living out of, and we want I don't think a million people should be wearing my pieces because it's geared to a certain customer, but I want to be able to sell, and a lot of people want to buy it. And so it has to be something that is sellable, but not, and I hate to use this word, but it's corny. You don't need to make, you know what I mean? I'm like, there's Walmart for that. So you want to have that I like to have that boutique feeling, but it's very sellable.
Gotcha. What would you say is, I know you started really young, but what would you say is the first item you created, and how did it make you feel?
You mean a piece of clothing or a
piece of clothing?
Okay.
Piece of clothing. What was the first piece of clothing that you made, and how did it make you feel?
Oh my goodness, that was like...
I know it's a long time ago.
Back when dinosaurs roamed.
Girl, you is not that old. Do not do that. You is not that old. Stop it. I guess maybe, what was that piece that gave you a feeling? Like, what did you make that was like, damn,
I'm thinking,
wow, I created this, and you still look at it and be like, damn, I made that.
Honestly, I think, in college, I pretty much, because I had a learning curve when it comes to sewing and tailoring. I did collections and people liked them, but I don't think it was until, I hate to say it, but maybe even 5 years ago, where I started to make red carpet outfits and say, okay, I'm a designer now. It's so crazy.
You feel like you was just being able to say it 5 years ago, as long as you've been designing?
Well, I've always been a designer, but meaning I'm actually it's hard to explain, but where you
feel like more people know who you are. Is that what it was? Like, was it a validation thing where it's like you feel like now multiple people can see what I've done and they're flocking to me now? Like, was it more of like a recognition thing?
Possibly, maybe unconsciously, because I started out in an era where we didn't have social media, so everything had to be word of mouth, or might have been in a print magazine or a newspaper. So you had to really grasp and hustle to get out there. Whereas now, you could post a picture, tag someone, and it may get a lot of people to look at it. But I think more so like when it came to recently, it was only because I feel like I was doing something as a kid that I always dreamed about, designing something that someone could wear on a red carpet,
Gotcha.
And I was wearing a lot of them, so it's like, and you were wearing it and you like it, so I guess I'm a late bloomer with that. Maybe you can call it a little bit of imposter syndrome. Sometimes I have to say in the past I definitely did. I don't know how to explain this, but I maybe underestimated myself. And now, I'm maybe having my son has given me the confidence to say, you have all this experience. Don't think you're not good enough.
Yeah, sometimes it takes someone else or something else to realize like you are the shit. Excuse my French, but yeah, like sometimes even though we should be like self-motivated like that, sometimes we need that reassurance, being like, oh dang, like maybe I was underestimating myself or devaluing myself. And I think that every designer goes to that when they're still trying to like figure it out, especially when they are getting inspired by so many different things and they're putting out so much different type of stuff. Yes. And you get that, like, I ain't gonna call it a block, but it's almost just like, who am I as a designer?
Right.
What am I as a designer?
Right.
And that's another reason I hate to say it. I hate Project Runway. And that's probably why, because it's like you guys push people to do something that are outside of their comfort zone when they are supposed to hone in on what makes them good. And then they get eliminated because they didn't show enough versatility and they're not supposed to make everything. And that's why I just don't, because I remember, when you got out of design school, everyone's question. So you're like, are you going to try out for Project Runway? Have you thought about Project Runway? And I was just like, I've never had a desire to. I've never wanted to.
I never
did want to because I'm just like, they're going to make me do that damn unconventional challenge and I'm going to fail. Yeah. And then I'm going to get kicked off for something that I never wanted to do in the first place. So I'm just like, I don't really see that point. Granted, I know it's for like prize money and all that good stuff and the experience and exposure, but I feel like I can get experience on my own practicing figuring out what I want to do. As far as exposure go, I can definitely put myself out there. Maybe not as much, but it's so many ways to counter that. All the stuff that you do go on there and do. So I don't know. I just was never into it. Like the challenges, like challenging me to do something that I don't want to do. I don't want to. I like, and I don't know. That's just how I always just like felt about it. Like, what is this?
It seemed fun to me. I actually did apply, even though I'm, a designer who felt like it's misleading a bit about, what it takes to be a designer. I think the opportunity is extraordinary. The money and to be able to the possibility of launching your own brand and show at, the big fashion weeks is amazing. And I actually had a work colleague and we auditioned at the same time. And she ended up trying again and got in. So,
she did. Which season? Well, who was it?
I don't remember her. I don't want to say her name.
Oh, you want to say? Oh, you? No. I'm like, if she was on the show, everybody know her name.
She was definitely on the show.
Oh, okay, she was on the show.
And she wasn't a designer. So see, there you go. She was a merchandising assistant.
And she learned how to sew and stuff and got on the show?
She knew how to sew, but she was a merchandising assistant.
Interesting.
She pushed. I did not, after the first time, I made it into the room and talked to Tim Gunn and everything. And I just felt like I said the wrong thing. So that caught me out.
You said something real black?
Yeah, I definitely did, and sometimes I have a habit of doing that, but I'm unapologetic about it.
Absolutely.
But it's funny, the girl Laura, the pregnant architect, was in the room, and I could tell she wasn't really feeling me. But I made the statement of how, fashion really comes from the street, and that, and that they should get more credit for that. That high fashion is really
street fashion.
Yeah, it's really taken from down in the gutter.
Yeah,
and but I think it's really too. I didn't really fight. I think they wanted to see that it's more about personality. So if I had to go back in there, I would definitely have fought. But I'm sort of glad that I went the path I got. Maybe it wasn't meant for me to do that. Because you do take a risk. I would have had to leave my job. I had a great job, and I would have had to leave my job for a period of time. Designers leave their job for 2 weeks and they get fired. That's just how the industry works.
True indeed. I like what you said about just to go back there. I like what you said about like just being like unapologetically black at all times. Even from myself, like working in the fashion, and I worked for Calvin Klein, I worked for Karl Lagerfeld. Like I said, I worked for Halston, I worked for G3 for a long time. I worked for Almost Famous, a lot of different apparel companies, and a lot of times I was the only black girl. I was in product development management for quite some time, and before that I was a coordinator and associate. So for me though, I found myself never ever And I had someone speak to me about it one time about like the way I talk and stuff like that. I'm like, but the same way I talk at work is the same way I spoke in my interview. So I don't, I know how some people say like in the interview they, they might change it up a little bit, speak the lingo or like switch it up when you get in interview mode. The way I speak when I'm interviewing is the same way I speak and talk when I'm at work. So there's been plenty of times where I think it was an Asian or a white colleague who commented on my hair and my hair color. And I think she said something about, she's like, I don't know if I'm feeling, I don't know, maybe I had red or brown, I don't know. She's like, I don't know if I'm feeling it red. I was like, I don't know if I asked you your opinion.
Someone that changes their hair every week, the comments really started to get to me about like, oh, is that your real hair? Or is that, it's like, do you have anything better to talk about?
Yeah. And so, but for me, I got comebacks. I got comebacks like that. So I'm like, I don't think I asked you what you thought. I don't think I like your outfit. You know what I mean? So he's like, I didn't mean for you to get offended. You didn't have to get aggressive. And I hate that word. Yeah. I'm not getting aggressive. I'm responding to what you said. Yeah. And if there's a little bass in my voice, that's just how I talk. I talk like this all the time. So I feel like I wasn't defending myself. I feel like it was another situation when somebody else called me aggressive. Oh, she said my personality was a lot for some people. I said, that sounds like a personal problem to me.
Agree.
That don't have nothing to do with me. If you're intimidated, she said that some people might be intimidated by my personality. That has nothing to do with me.
It's them.
That's some insecure shit on your end. But like, I'm in a group, not a group, I'm in a work office full of grown ass women. If you are intimidated from the way that I speak, it's something that you got to figure out on your end over there. But I spoke like this in my interview. I speak like this every day. I don't know. Like, but I'm not gonna change who I am. I am unapologetically Black at all times. Yeah, I don't care what you think.
I think that if you conform, you become resentful.
Facts.
So there's times where I would have to feel like I had to soften up what I'm saying, or wait, or stop and think of what I'm saying first, because they're gonna think I have an attitude. But then when you look at it, I would look at it and say, well, if I didn't look the way I did and looked like someone off the complete opposite and said the same thing, would they have perceived it that way? And no, absolutely not.
Right.
And so unfortunately, that's sometimes what we have to go through, dealing with personalities and dealing with, I'm going to just put it out there, white women tears.
Woo, bye, privilege.
Yes.
Shut up. That's how I feel, because I had a couple of situations with coworkers where one was crying and stuff like that. And I just wanted to be like, oh my God, seriously? Like, and over to some of the silliest shit ever, but I'm just like, this is crazy.
Yeah, I definitely had a Karen situation myself where, we just had a disagreement. I asked her she came over that felt the need to tell me to do something, and she wasn't my boss. And I said, you're not my boss. Don't come over here. And she literally kind of was taken aback and acted like I was
like you had wronged her in some way.
Ooh, child. And I looked at her, I was like, you can't be serious. Like, really? Like, and then you went and told on me? Like, what did I do to you? Like, except tell you something about yourself, and you couldn't handle it.
Right. They don't like that. They don't like that at all. Well, with all your accomplishments and everything that you've done thus far, what can we expect to see next from you? I'm
just going to constantly just keep topping myself. Working on being a better businesswoman, growing my line, and that's something I'm really excited about. I have a lot of projects in the work, even through all of this health crisis this year. I had a really good time to sit back and really hone in on and focus on what was important and what was the best way to push forward and to succeed. I'm finding new relationships. I'm aligning myself with really good people and great creatives. So I have quite a few projects in the works, hopefully that will be shown, if not fall towards the end of the year, that I'm really, really super excited about.
Nice. All right. Well, it was great having you. Thanks so much for joining me. If you just want to throw out your social media handles so they know where to follow you and where to get in contact with you.
Thank you. My IG is ZYEM_NYC. The clothing brand page is at ZYEM Kids. The website is www.ZYEM.com.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me. And as I always say, stay Black. Peace out.